right, so gun control legislation has made it out of committee in the House. But even with the president pushing for lawmakers to reach a compromise, the bill's chances in the Senate, well, they don't look good. CBS News political correspondent Huey-Burns is following the story. Joining us from Washington, Caitlin. So, you know, that package of gun control bills that passed the House Judiciary Committee yesterday, it passed by a vote of 25 to 19. So then where do we go from here? You know, what are the odds of it making it through the full House vote? And then, of course, the Senate. I don't think I have to ask what the odds are for that.
It will likely pass the House. They're expected to vote on it in the full House next week. But this Judiciary Committee vote really fell on partisan lines here coming out of committee. The full Democratic House will pass it. But when senators on the other side of the Capitol are not even expecting to take this up because they know that none of these provisions in there have the votes. So what's essentially in this package? The big top lines are raising the minimum age to purchase a semi-automatic weapon to 21 from 18. It also includes a ban on high-capacity magazines and some other regulations here. This is a way for House Democrats to show that they are acting on something. Even though they know it's not going to pass and get onto the president's desk, they want to be able to show that they're engaged in this issue, and it helps to really start to put the pressure on senators who are working on this bipartisan deal to really take some action here.
A group of moderate Democrats is also asking the Speaker to break the package up into individual bills. Explain that for us.
Yeah, so you have about 24 Democrats who are in some really tough races on the House side, some more moderate districts that they really need to keep in order to have any chance of keeping the House. And what those members are saying is, look, break this down into individual bills so that we can at least try to get some bipartisan support on some items instead of putting a big package to the floor, which we know Republicans are not going to support. Their argument is, look, we need to get to something. We need to get to yes on something. We need to get something to the president's desk so that they can go back and tell constituents, look, this is what we were able to do, instead of saying, well, we tried. And that's really the big thing for Democrats this whole midterm cycle, is that they are competing in an environment where they're facing lots of headwinds and they have a lot of difficulty passing legislation onto the president's desk, even though they control both chambers of Congress here. But it's interesting to watch how this issue might play in suburban districts. And a lot of these lawmakers in more moderate districts were able to turn suburban women especially into their favor in the 2018 midterm elections, but they might be slowly starting to turn away. So watch to see how this issue plays, especially when we're talking about schools, school safety, gun violence, how this issue plays in some of those more competitive districts.
Can you break down the main arguments lawmakers made during yesterday's hearing?
Yeah, well, Democrats were saying, look, we need to act now. It's long overdue. You saw really emotional appeals from Democrats. One Pennsylvania Democratic lawmaker, almost broke into tears when urging her colleagues to just do something on this. Republicans on the committee were saying, look, we don't need to legislate it right after these things. We need to take some time. You can argue, of course, that there have been so many mass shootings over the years that they've had plenty of time to really consider legislation. But Republicans were arguing that this would be tantamount to infringing upon Second Amendment rights. You actually had a Republican lawmaker from Florida who was appearing in the markup from Zoom from his home, really actually show his firearms during the hearing. He pulled them out and was trying to argue that the ban on high-capacity magazines would not fit the guns that he had, and so they would be rendered illegal. Now, there's a lot of, that's not true. There is a clause in this bill that would grandfather in some of these reforms, but that just goes to show that even in the wake of a mass shooting, you had some Republicans showing their firearms and really, not incentivized at all to support some of these reforms.
And before we let you go, Caitlin, CBS News has learned that former President Trump plans to publicly respond to the January 6 hearings, which start next week. What do we know about what that public response will look like?
Yeah, some counter-programming, which we know the former president really relishes in that kind of environment where he is able to counter-program something that's going on. We saw that throughout the course of his presidency. CBS News has learned that there is an attempt by the former president to offer some kind of counter-programming. The big question is whether other lawmakers are going to offer their own counter-programming as well. The Republican National Committee says that they are going to be essentially, rebutting a lot of this. And remember, Republicans have been arguing since the beginning that this is a partisan exercise, and that's really what they've been focusing on. Even though there are 2 Republicans on the select committee, the special committee to investigate the January 6th attacks, but those Republicans, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, have really been pushed out of the party. Kinzinger isn't running for re-election, as we know, and Cheney is facing a really tough primary fight in Wyoming that's expected to happen in August. But it will be very interesting to watch how they try to rebut any of this, and we're expecting some pretty compelling presentation from this committee.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us. Thank you, Caitlin, as always.
Thank you.